let's get into our starts of the week, one of our favorite segments, week in, week out. We're going to go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, give you guys that, maybe they're on the bubble, right? Tough matchup or coming off a down game. We want to tell you, look, plug them back into your lineup. These are guys that we expect to have great outings here, surpass their expectations, good or bad, in week 9. And Alex, I'll pass it off to you first. Who is your quarterback start of the week?
Starting out at the quarterback position here, I'm going with Josh Allen against the Seattle Seahawks. And after weeks 1 through 4, I thought Josh Allen was going to be disqualified from start of the week talk because he was such a lock. But after the 30 points per game he put up in those first 4 weeks, he's only put up 16 points per game in the last 4 weeks. So I think this is going to be a really good bounce back opportunity for Josh Allen. And a lot of it's about the matchup. I mean, Seattle is 31st against the quarterback position, allowing 25 points per game so far this season. And this is the part of the season, Steph, where defense data starts to become a lot more relevant. At this point, we have 8 games of a sample size, 7 games for some teams, to where we can say, hey, this team can't stop the run, or this team can't stop the pass, or this team is, stingy against the run or the pass. So now you're starting to be able to really play the matchups here for the back half of the season. And in this matchup against Seattle, I think Josh Allen's just going to have to put up points and going to be able to put up points with his arm. A 53.5 point over-under in this game. So Vegas thinks it's going to be, decently high scoring. So if you've had Josh Allen and if he's disappointed you, he hasn't killed you, but if he's disappointed you, don't get cute this week. Expect a big bounce back game against the Seahawks.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, Allen there is a smash play. He's giving you everything that you want. He's improved as a passer. Rushing volume, rushing touchdown volume, everything you want to see from a fantasy quarterback here. My quarterback start of the week is Tom Brady. He's against New Orleans in prime time. We saw that game in week 1 when the Bucs and the Saints played. And Tom Brady gave you 21 fantasy points. I think we can see very close to that, if not more, again this week. If you remember in that week 1 game, Mike Evans was a little banged up, was just kind of out there as a decoy, ended up getting a touchdown, short, goal line throw towards the end of that game that kind of saved his fantasy outing. But you add Antonio Brown into this weapons group, and what something that we've seen and something that I think we haven't really bounced back on is how much good weapons help their quarterback. We saw Stephon Diggs go to Buffalo. Josh Allen starts balling out because he has better weapons. We see Cam Newton struggle with horrible weapons. And so you give AB, Tom Brady, on top of the fantastic wide receiver core that he already had with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Godwin, we don't know if he's going to play or not, but either way, I am willing to start Tom Brady against New Orleans. I think this is going to be a relatively high-scoring game. And Tom Brady, man, has just been balling the hell out so far in 2020. Right now is the QB5 in fantasy. Is number 3 in pass attempts, so 38.5 per game. Number 1 in red zone passes. Number 1 in deep ball attempts, which just absolutely blows your mind because you don't think Tom Brady as a guy who's chucking it deep like a Russell Wilson, but he's number 2 in completed air yards, 3 in air yards, 4th in passing yards. You just got to love the production that we're seeing here from Tom Brady. He's not being a conservative game manager. I know he always gets flack for being a check down guy, and we'll always see that with Leonard Fournette kind of taking over that James White check down role. But you added the better weapons in here, and if AB has a good game, I think we are going to see one. We already talked about him in our start sits. Go check that out if you have not yet. But I'm willing to plug in Tom Brady. He's my start of the week here over a lot of other options in week 9.
I like that. I like that one a lot. You keep rolling out the GOAT here at 43 years old. And they got that showdown on Sunday Night Football, which will be great. That Saints-Bucks matchup is going to be just awesome. AB is back. Michael Thomas could be back as well. Can't wait for that game. But, Steph, my running back start of the week, a guy we talked about earlier, it's Chase Edmonds against the Miami Dolphins. And this one should be so obvious, but he's still only being started in about 50% of ESPN leagues right now, according to their data. So if Chase Edmonds is on your waiver wire or on your bench, put him in this week against the Miami Dolphins. He is a smash play. He is a top 10 play for me in this game. And I know Miami has improved a lot against the run, but they're still 26th in the NFL against running backs this season in fantasy football. So we talked about the volume earlier. This season, Chase Edmonds has been seeing about 4 carries and 5 targets a game. Kenyon Drake was seeing 17 carries and 1 target per game. Without Drake there, I think maybe Benjamin could come in and get a handful of carries here and there, but we should see a big workload for Chase Edmonds in a good matchup. He's been incredibly efficient this year. I think that continues, and he is a must start. He could end up the week as a top 5 back.
Love that call. Edmonds is a smash play this week. Now, my running back start of the week, he's coming off a tough outing. He's kind of had ups and downs all season long. It's Deandre Swift against Minnesota. Minnesota's not the easiest matchup. They're 13th against the run. That's probably all their defense is good for, is stopping the run. But you know Detroit is not going to be able to stop Dalvin Cook. He's going to run all over him. We saw the massive boom game that Dalvin Cook had was the RB1 far and away. 3 touchdowns, just all over, through the air, through the ground. Dalvin Cook absolutely ate the Green Bay Packers last week. I think he's going to continue that tear here. The Lions are going to have to pass. And I'm not saying that Deandre Swift is like an absolute smash play. He's going to go for 25 this week, but I think he's a solid guy that you can plug in. If you have him, if you need him, you can put him at your RB2, maybe even your flex spot, because the passing work is going to be there. And Kenny Galladay's out. And if it's not Kenny Galladay, then it's Marvin Jones, who's had his own ups and downs, his struggles this season. And then it's TJ Hawkinson, and then it's Deandre Swift. So for a guy who's the number 2 or 3 pass-catching weapon there, has started to see a little bit more carries on the ground. I know we had that boom game against Jacksonville. It's kind of fallen off since then. I think this is the swing back the other way. The only scary thing with Swift is that he did get taken off the field for some pass protection issues. And now I'm just reading that Matthew Stafford is actually just put on the COVID IR list. So that might change some things as well. I think regardless, though, I am willing to plug in Swift as a low-end RB2 or a flex option.
Yeah, that's a good call out about Stafford. I just saw that too, Steph, on the COVID list, and that affects my wide receiver start of the week, who is Marvin Jones against the Minnesota Vikings. But I'll caveat it with this. I think if Stafford is out, I think Marvin Jones and DeAndre Swift are still both in flex consideration. If Stafford is in, which it looks like it was a close contact, so he doesn't have COVID. It was a close contact, so he could clear protocol by Sunday. There is still a shot Matt Stafford could play at the time of this recording. But if he is in, then your guy Swift and my guy Marvin Jones proceed as, start of the week value here. I mean, Marvin Jones is back like he never left, man. I've been cautiously optimistic all season long about Marvin Jones, even with his lack of production, just because the snaps have been there. Like, he has played at least 89% of snaps in every single game. I know he's not just running in circles or out there, so the balls just haven't gone his way. Stafford, we didn't really see him open up and throw the ball a ton until these last couple of games. And with Kenny G out, I think Marvin Jones is going to be featured as that number 1 guy. And he's had essentially 3 games without Kenny Galladay this season, the first 2, and then Kenny G left in the first half last week. So in these 3 games, he's averaged 13.8 fantasy points per game. That's flex production. And for Marvin Jones, I think without a touchdown, he can get there. And if he scores a touchdown, he could really put you over the top into the 20 to 25 point range in this game. The matchup is just awesome. It's 53.5 point over under against the Minnesota Vikings, who are 30th against the wide receiver position, giving up 48 points per game to the position so far. So I think Marvin Jones, he has one of these breakout eruption games, it seems like, every single year. If Matt Stafford is out there this week and if he can clear that COVID protocol, I think Marvin Jones could have that blow-up game here in Week 9 against the Vikings.
He's good for one a year at least, a multiple touchdown game. We saw, David Blau and Jeff Driscoll actually produce some pretty, fantasy relevant weeks for some of the pass catchers there in Detroit. But yeah, Stafford being out is definitely going to be a slight downtick to these guys. But if Stafford's in, plug him in. I think you can still plug him in if you're in a tough spot. Now, my wide receiver start of the week, it was Brandon Ayuk, and I'm still going to put my stamp of approval down on Brandon Ayuk. I had him as a start of the week last week, and he absolutely smashed. Deebo Samuel's now out. George Kittle's now out. Ayuk is the last man standing. I think he's going to absolutely dominate. He's been so efficient so far this year. But we saw, even with Nick Mullins in the game, Ayuk was still able to be productive. I think it's going to be a funneled volume situation.
Yeah.
But because that's the Thursday night game, I don't know when we're going to get this thing out and upload it on YouTube and on podcasts. I'm going to change my start of the week from Brandon Ayuk to A.J. Brown. You might be hesitant to plug A.J. Brown in after what should have been a smash play against Cincinnati last week. Only 12 fantasy points there. Caught 4 of 7 targets for 24 yards.
Saved by that touchdown.
Saved you with the touchdown, which, if you started A.J. Brown, you're wiping the sweat off your brown, because that could have been a really disgusting outing from him. But ended up getting that touchdown, and since week 5, A.J. Brown is the wide receiver 2 since he's come back from the injury off that forced bye week because of the COVID situation with the Titans. And I know you look at, okay, down week, now tough matchup against Chicago. Should I start A.J. Brown? The answer is hell yeah, because he's had a touchdown in every single game. He's had multiple touchdown games, has been seeing much higher volume than he did last year. We talked about Corey Davis in our start sits, and with the shifts in the way that this Tennessee Titans team is moving the ball, passing much more, not just relying on Derrick Henry 30 times a game, and Tannehill, with his efficiency and increased volume, has seen A.J. Brown as the biggest benefactor of that. I have him projected for 15 to 18 points. Could see him absolutely smash that. He had 27 points against the Pittsburgh Steelers. What A.J. Brown's doing right now cannot be ignored. He's an absolute stud. And I have a quick question for you, Alex. Right now, who do you have higher, A.J. Brown or DK Metcalf?
I'll still take DK. He's just tied to Russell Wilson. And, Ryan Tannehill's been great, but I want the guy that's tied to Russell Wilson and taking over and emerging as the one. So I'll go DK, but AJ's not far behind. And, to your start of the week here, he's the AB you want to be starting this week, AJ Brown, in a interesting matchup.
Look, I better not see A.J. Brown on any of these start-sit decisions. Guys, keep hitting us with those down in the comments. But if you have A.J. Brown in one of those start-sits, I'm going to say 9.99 times out of 10. I'm going to tell you go A.J. Brown.
Absolutely.
Now let's move over to our tight end starts of the week. It's brutal out here with tight ends. We could throw out the chalk options, Andrews, Kittle, Kelsey, all those guys. And now we have, Kittle out, actually. I shouldn't have thrown him in there, which makes this tight end landscape even more disgusting. But my start of the week is Eric Ibron with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Deontay Johnson's been banged up. There's been multiple games where he's been a healthy start when game time at kickoff, and then before halftime he's out of the rest of the game. And in those games, Eric Ibron has taken over 8 targets and 5 targets those last 2 games, has just as much touchdown upside as a guy like Jimmy Graham, Rob Gronkowski, or even Logan Thomas, who a lot of guys are streaming this week. I'd much rather go with Eric Ibron. He's coming off 11 and 14-point games. And again, not much more needs to be said. The easy matchup against Dallas.
I like that one, Steph. And it's a total wasteland out here at tight end. So I'm just going for a body that's getting snaps and targets. It's Hunter Henry against
Jordan Reed.
It's not Jordan Reed. It's not. It's actually Hunter Henry against the Vegas Raiders. And we talked about this game a little bit earlier, and this should be a shootout. Herbert is balling, and the Raiders have been putting up points and giving up a lot of points as well. So you look at Hunter Henry, he's playing 84% of snaps this season. He's 6th at the tight end position in targets per game with 6.5 targets a game. Justin Herbert's going to have a couple touchdowns in this one, no doubt. So I'm kind of putting my chips on hoping those touchdowns go to Hunter Henry over, Keenan Allen or Mike Williams in this one. But I think against the Raiders, he should have a pretty good baseline and see his fair share of targets as well. So look for a solid bounce back game here for Hunter Henry in a good matchup.